Oh, wait a second. Yeah. What's that? What's that go first? Good afternoon and welcome to the Explorers Club. My name is Ted Janulis. I'm one of 40-plus people who have been working on World Oceans Week for the better part of half a year now. It's fitting that we start out with Rolex because when we did our first World Oceans Week, and this is our sixth, they showed confidence in us and supported us for a first-time thing, which actually turned out really well and has now gotten bigger and bigger over ensuing years, and now it's become something truly special with so many people attending and so many incredible connections happening. It would be ordinarily the case that I would say this is the kickoff, but it turns out that yesterday we had a wonderful briefing for early and mid-career ocean professionals from Francois Baillet, who manages the World Oceans Day program, along with Oceanic Global, and they spent 3 hours on who governs the oceans, the big issues that are confronting all of us. And then we had a mixer with people from all different kinds of groups, Nippon Fellows from the UN, our World Underwater Scholarship Society, and we brought them all together for a series of mixer and networking. And after discussing for the entire night all these different big issues we face, what they decided was to go to a comedy club in Brooklyn. But you know what? They all bonded. So much of what we do here is about bonding and making connections. So we're going to get right into it with our first day of programming. And I'm delighted to introduce Marc Bryan-Brown. And one of the things we decided to do this year was have a thing called ambassadors. And as you may have figured out by now, the ambassadors are octopuses, penguins, and mangroves. And with each of those, we partnered with a world-class organization to expand our reach new audiences, but also make that connectivity with different parts of the wild oceans so we can better understand them and ultimately conserve them. So Marc dove in, is a board member right here. Marc dove in with incredible enthusiasm on the octopus side, as you can tell from his T-shirt, and has added so much more to the proceedings over the way. So we asked him if he could kick us off, and so we don't do a double introduction, he's going to take you through what you'll be experiencing for the rest of the afternoon and evening. So without any further ado, thank you to all our sponsors, thank you to all the people who worked so hard on this, and thank you to all of you for being here. We hope you'll find the entire week of great interest, and thank you, Marc Bryan-Brown.
Well, thank you, Ted. It's truly a privilege and an honor to be here. Never in my life did I expect to be championing octopuses for a day, and I've never had more fun. But anyway, I don't want to waste time because we're already running a little bit late. But our first panel tonight is Ocean Innovation Paths, which are new paradigms for ocean tech solutions. And Erika, Heine, Montague is going to lead this for us. And Erika he's going to his notes, the Chief Technologist at Schmidt Marine, an oceanographer, an explorer, and a self-described ocean evangelist. Please, tell us all about it, Erika.
Thank you, Marc. Well, what's exciting for me today is not to talk about myself, but to talk about these panelists. It's a great pleasure to moderate this panel. As Marc mentioned, I'm with Schmidt Marine Technology Partners. We're based out of San Francisco. We started about 7 years ago with this premise that there were a lot of compelling ocean technologies that were hindered in their path to getting out to commercialization or broader distribution because they couldn't get non-dilutive funding, sort of in the form of grants. So Schmidt Marine went on a mission to find those groups and to fund them along this path. We focused on fisheries, habitat health, enabling ocean technologies, and that we found that there was a great need for this, more than we could actually ourselves fund. And so then we started to partner with other groups with their funding. And it has been a great pleasure to this point to fund over 60 projects, 45 of them actively. A couple of them are in this room tonight. But we found a trend that was particularly interesting, and it was this influx of ideas from outside of our traditional industry, those folks that were transitioning to the production and scaling of ocean tech solutions. And this is the heart of tonight's panel discussion. The individuals here today are rising examples of the opportunity, dedication, and challenges in bringing solutions to the masses. I will provide a brief description of each one of our panelists, followed by their presentations where they can tell you more about themselves. And then they will come up for a panel discussion. So I just ask that you hold all your questions until all of our presenters have presented. We're going to kick off with Bill Stone. Some of you here may know him. He's been a longtime member of the Explorers Club. Bill obtained his PhD in engineering and went on to work with the National Institute of Standards and Technologies. That sounds daunting. But his career did not end there. And Bill eventually became one of the most well-known American cave divers and explorers, and eventually founded Stone Aerospace outside of Austin, Texas. And so now, with no further ado, Bill, would you please just tell us more about yourself?
All right, let's see if I can get all this to work here. These microphones usually aren't tall enough. Oh, well, messed it up. All right. I'm going to try to compress 40 years into 7 minutes, so we're going to move really fast, and if you have questions, we can answer them later. I worked at a national lab for over 2 decades, and of the things that I can tell you about what I did there, 2 of the most interesting ones are here. The space shuttle was launched over 130 times. That orange thing that you see behind there is called the external tank. And one of the things that very few people know is that that tank reached over 98% of orbital velocity every time they launched a shuttle. And then they ditched it into the Pacific Ocean. We thought there was a different idea for what you could do with that. And by designing a guidance and propulsion package to go on the rear end of it, along with some solar arrays, we were going to convert it into a series of industrial labs and tank farms, which, had they done that starting in the 1980s, would have completely changed the new space arena that is going on today. However, it didn't quite work that way. It got all the way up to the White House, and about 6 weeks later, the lab director called me to his office, and he said, "I got bad news and good news." I said, "Yeah?" He says, "The bad news is it got all the way up there, and they killed it." I said, "Why?" He says, "Because they saw it as competition to the jobs program called the space station. Welcome to DC politics, son." And I said, "Yeah?" He says, "The good news is you got funding for 5 years for 10 people. What are you going to do with it?" And so we started working on autonomous ground systems. And that may not look like much. That's not your standard race car there. That is an Army Humvee, which we outfitted with state-of-the-art sensors back in 1995. And by a year or so later, let's see if I can get it to go here, we were driving at 60 miles an hour across the NIST campus without anybody at the wheel. And within a year or so after that, we took it off-road through bushes and forests with the machine doing all of the thinking. However, on nights and weekends and holidays, I led a team that began the design of what ultimately became 7 generations of closed-cycle life support equipment. And these things eventually got smaller as we moved on. We had redundancy. This guy right here was 18-hour range at 200-meter depth capacity, full onboard decompression. We were doing 5-kilometer penetration dives, 22-hour bottom time dives, including decompression rather, not just bottom time. Eventually, that came out, and some people who are divers may have seen these today. They call them rebreathers. But the thing that was really interesting about that project, in my mind, this was a 1999 project, was that we designed this gadget that in real time built the first 3D models of underground systems, cave diving. And for those of you who know some of the divers, that's Jill Heine there driving that device. And it produced this three-dimensional map over 100 million data points representing the geometry of what's inside Wakulla Springs, Florida. And this, Erika was asking where is the split line and everything, and this was kind of it. Word got out through a couple of colleagues, and NASA asked us to bid on a job. Well, to make a long story short, over the next 20 years, they gave us over $50 million. And we became the world authority on nuclear-capable cryobots. And if anybody doesn't know what those words are, we can talk about that later. But it was what those things were to deploy below 24,000 meters of ice on the moon Europa, which orbits Jupiter. We came up with these things here. And the idea was, can you make vehicles navigate in the absence of GPS over long periods of time? Depth-X went on and explored the world's deepest hydrothermal spring called Zakatone. Endurance, which was the follow-on, became the first robot to go into a subglacial lake in Antarctica. Artemis was this big vehicle here designed from scratch, became the first vehicle to explore underneath the Ross Ice Shelf, also in Antarctica. That's a 20-meter deep hole drilled through the ice there to get in. And there it is, taken off. Came home on its own, found that 1.2-meter diameter hole latched on by itself and came up on its own. The son of Artemis is this portable device here, 6 degree of freedom system called Sunfish. And I'll show you here if I can get it to go. For those who are cave divers, this is Peacock Springs. And the robot is building 3D maps, navigating by geometry, and it comes home 10 times faster when it goes in. We took it a couple of years ago down to northern Namibia, to the world's largest subterranean lake, completely unexplored below a depth of 100 meters by divers. It went on and completely mapped and explored the entire thing on its own, the first autonomous subterranean real exploration ever done on this planet. Other people kind of liked the idea of those maps, and we have been building them for sponsors and clients ever since. We founded a company called Sunfish Inc. It is a 6 degree of freedom vehicle, and it will build maps and come home with those. So if you have an idea of strange places you need to have an autonomous vehicle go, that is Sunfish. And right now, it is lined up to begin inspection of aqueducts in several cities here in the U.S., and will then go on to ports and harbors, offshore green energy, tower inspection, and coral reef autonomous inspection. And I would like to thank Schmidt for helping us out with this, and that's where we are. And I've got 1 minute left. So.
Bill is not only amazing in his tech and his height, but his punctuality, so I thank you for that. Clearly there's a lot more tech than we can possibly go over in this amount of time, so I encourage you folks to talk to these guys afterwards, too. They do incredible stuff. Next we have Jeremy McKane, also part of the Explorers Club. Excuse me. Jeremy is the founder of Ocean Currency Network. He is an artist, explorer, and entrepreneur with a passion for the environment. His focus has been directed on ocean issues for several years now, and he has also co-founded Ultramarine, which is an ocean action summit for Sir Richard Branson on Neckert Island, with the mission to protect 30% of the world's oceans by 2030. So, Jeremy?
All right. Well, this is exciting. We're back in real spaces again. I was afraid that we were going to do this on Zoom again. Well, one of the things that we didn't say in that bio was that I kind of consider myself a last mile science individual. I'm not going to say I'm a scientist. I'm not, and I'm going to explain why here in a little bit. But one of the things that I really wanted to strive to do years ago, and we'll talk a little bit later about my history, is that I had a history in tech. I always liked to take things apart and figure them out. And if I knew as a kid I would take apart toys and there was too many screws left over, I didn't do my job right. And so I learned a lot of things that way. One of the things I started noticing as an artist, this is one of my one of my whale pictures, I go down to Tonga, and my mission is to try to be the first to ever capture a humpback whale birth. And I've gotten very close. But in those moments, I would ask about how scientists store data. How do they communicate with each other? And there are a variety of different comments. Well, one thing that was evidently resounding true is that we have data, but we don't always share it with each other. And for probably good reason in many cases. If it cost me $10 million to map one of those caves, and if I asked you for that data for free, you might not want to give it to me for free. And so we had to come up with a way to figure out how can we learn how everyone is working together. So, we created something called the Ocean Currency Network because the greatest currency is a healthy ocean. And we realized that, a measurement system was actually really important. So that was the first thing that we really thought. It's like, what if we could create a network where everyone who's collecting data from the ocean could be incentivized to do this? So one of the things that I kept hearing a lot was that we need to protect 30% of the world's oceans. And actually, before I heard that, it was 20%. It was 20% by 2020. And it's 2022, in case COVID got your brain, and we were at 2.7 fully protected. Now, depending on who you talk to, it could be up to 7 or 8, but that's because there's some arguments about what is protected and is there enforcement. When we talk about fully protected, like, pull the cord, we're talking 2.7%. We are largely, grossly underdoing this because this is a very hard task. And so one of our missions is to try to figure out tangible tasks for figuring out how to use technology to do this. So really important. So one of the problems that we saw was that there's just a substantial amount of data that's out there. We mentioned that problem already. And then our solution was, what if we incentivize individuals? What do I mean by that? Well, right about the time that Trump took office, I started to notice that the environmental data that was out there was being deleted. References to climate change were being deleted. And I thought, how inappropriate is it that something so important to humankind on this planet can be removed unilaterally? I thought if there was any good use case for blockchain in all consensus, that this would be the reason. So we started working with groups that were collecting data and saying, hey, if you would share your data with us, we'll keep track of it, and then we're going to go try to talk to other groups around the world. And if they're interested in buying that data, then it works like a way that you could actually like a stock photography. You have extra photos from a photo shoot, you send it up to Getty, maybe it'll get sold, maybe it won't. Hopefully it does if you're really good at what you do. But what's really great about this is that as we start collecting data over massive amounts of area, we start noticing dark spots. And that's the part that I get really excited about. And so I recognize that a lot of people who are collecting data, if they wanted to work with me, it wasn't so fast to get all that data, right? So what we ended up doing is we said, well, what if we could build our own tools and start to kind of do that? So we built fully autonomous vessels that can go out at sea and have some of the same sensors that some of our scientists would include. What that did was it allowed them to be able to have this capability to collect data, and we can move them in dark spots. And so that was the real core mission of this. So the question is, how does it work? So we kind of got this nice little graph here. So we wanted to have decentralized groups of individuals. So that means you guys. We open source our WHOI technology and say, hey, here are the things you can buy at Amazon. This is how it works. The raw data gets stored on chain, and then these multiple data sets are really not valuable until they're actually analyzed. And so this is why we have a science board. So we have a group of scientists that we go, it's kind of like Uber. We say, hey, do you have 5 hours this week to analyze this data? They say, yes, I do. They get a packet at the very beginning of the month. They say, this is the data. Can you give us we'll give you some context. Can you tell us what these multiple data sets mean? Then what we do is we display that data in a geospatially 3D interface so that we can start to give people an idea, not just the scientists, but the individuals who actually are the stakeholders in these areas, an understanding of exactly what's happening in that area. And then these ocean patterns, hopefully, once we start to look at where all that data is, we look at those dark spots and say, well, why are there dark spots there? Is there something that's happening in these regions that we can do? Now, we're using our autonomous vessels, but we want to work with other people as well. We're also developing our CubeSat program. We'll have a launch announcement here pretty soon. But we'll be doing Earth-based systems, satellite-based Earth observation systems. But the cool part about that is that we'll actually take what is on chain and store it off-world, because I really don't want another Trump deleting stuff. And then our clients, which would be financial institutions, how do you verify whether an ESG investment is actually making the impact that it says it's doing? And so we feel that really at the end of the day, yeah, we're measurement as a service, this is what we call ourselves, but we really feel that we're a risk management tool to ESG. We can give you real data to tell you if your aquaculture investment is actually doing something for the environment or maybe it's not doing something. And there's a number of ways we can talk about that later. And then, just a little bit on data visualization, and I'll close. We'll talk about this probably on one-on-one, but I think it's really important for citizen scientists, children, everyone on this planet to really understand what's happening and the waters that are around us. And so we're working on a team right now. I kind of joke around with my team and say we kind of have the Commodore 64 version of this right now because there's so many data. We're actually processing, if you go to our website, we're actually processing over 1 million points of data every single night and plotting them on a map. And that's going to change. So we're going to add more and more and more. And we feel like as those things change, what started out of a simple idea of how to unite people together will turn into something where we better understand, one of the most important ecosystems on the planet. So that's what I'm working on.
Thanks, Jeremy. Next we have Allan Adams. I'm sorry, I'm laughing because to read these bios is a little ridiculous. These people are incredible. Allan started out as a physicist at MIT, and at one point his TED Talks on gravitational waves were the most watched online. Allan ended up transitioning into oceanography, founding the Future Ocean Labs at MIT in January of 2017, and became a visiting investigator at Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. But like any person with restless ambitions, that was just not enough for Allan. So then he founded Aquatic Labs, which he's going to tell you more about today.
It's really a treat to be here. So I wasn't raised as an oceanographer. I was born in Colombia. Oh, sorry, this is jumping ahead. There we go. I was born in Colombia. I was raised in Texas. I went to college in Massachusetts. I went to grad school in California. I was a postdoc in India and finally ended up as a faculty member in the physics department at MIT. And I spent 15 very comfortable years hanging out there. But then, I should say, while I was at MIT, what I was doing was string theory. I was a card-carrying string theorist studying 7-dimensional black holes and understanding things that don't exist. So along the way, while I was there, I befriended an extraordinary underwater photographer, and I also got to know, because it's MIT, it's the kind of place it is, the high-speed imaging folks at MIT. And, peanut butter and chocolate got these two circles together, and before I knew it, I was at the New England Aquarium with $500,000 of camera equipment, filming a TV ad campaign for them. And that led to a bunch of other ridiculous adventures and documenting oceans and freshwater ecosystems all over the world for communication purposes, for museums, for universities. And I got to explore with all these amazing people like Jill, who I couldn't believe I got to play with. But this was all a hobby. This was what I did for fun on the weekends. So that was me, card-carrying physicist, high-speed underwater photographer on the weekends, everything completely normal until something very unexpected to me happened. In 2013, that guy over there on the left, my son Arthur, showed up, and a year and a half later, Percy on the right showed up. And, well, that was pretty dramatic. And they fell in love with the ocean the same way I fell in love with them. And suddenly, and it's so painfully cheesy, I felt responsible for the ocean. I felt responsible for the world they were inheriting in a way I never had before. It suddenly mattered to me that what I was doing was not useful. I mean, I will defend the useless to the ends of the earth. It's really important that we do useless things. And it had never really mattered to me that I was doing useless things until these guys started really caring about those princess parrotfish that they were seeing. And that's how I became an oceanographer. So I left my career in physics, and thanks in no small part to my amazing colleagues and the deans at MIT who gave me enough rope, I started a new lab at MIT, the Future Ocean Lab, dedicated to building instruments for ocean exploration. And it felt a bit like jumping off a cliff, because I had spent 20 years becoming actually an expert and building an actual career, and then just walking away from it into a field where I had no actual expertise. It's a little bit terrifying, but that's also kind of the most fun part, the beginning of the learning curve, right? And boy, that got me excited. So pretty soon I was building instruments for ocean exploration and monitoring, and that was good. So this is an example of what we're doing. So this is on the Nautilus, Bob Ballard's ship out of Papahanaumokuakea in northern Hawaiian Islands. That black sphere, oops, that was the wrong button. That black sphere is a 360 deep ocean camera that we sent 4,500 meters underwater to build VR shots of deep ocean vents. And that's a whole other story, which I'll happily regale anyone with some other time. I really enjoyed this. But the thing is, that turned out not to be the most well, let me come back to that. The thing I love about exploring the ocean is this sense of lifting the veil, of looking deep under what's invisible and seeing what's beneath, right? There are these magical moments when you're descending down or your robot is descending down and you're in the middle of the water column and all of a sudden you're surrounded by snow of pelagic crabs that never touch the surface. There are these moments when you get to the bottom of the ocean and all you see for kilometers in every direction are these crinoids covering every surface as far as you can see. It's endless how much fun you can have. But the flip side of that is, if I ask you what's 30 meters under the surface here, we don't know. Water is opaque. We think of it as transparent. It's profoundly not transparent. It's opaque. Is there a reef? Is there a shipwreck? Is there an abandoned oil well that's leaking oil? So I'm going to cut this short. One of my favorite examples of the unknowability of what's down there is William Beebe, who strapped himself with his engineer Otis Barton into a steel shell and descended thousands of feet into the ocean. And what he discovered was something that people had only seen mushed up in troll nets until then, was this rich ecosystem that we now know is the vast dominant form of biomass in the ocean that lives deep in the dark of the ocean, comes up at night to feed, and goes back down later. It goes back down to hide from predators at night. So over the next few years, I started building instruments at MIT and Woods Hole to go down and do what Beebe did, but robotically. We built instruments that can measure the light levels 800 meters underwater and track what the biology is doing. We can count individual photons from the sun and tell which ones are bioluminescent and which ones are from the sun. We built a sampling system which measures environmental DNA. The little bits of DNA get sloughed off an animal so that we can find out what the community is even without seeing them, when they're nowhere nearby, just that they swam through. And that's incredibly powerful. It lets you see the invisible again. The thing is, I got into this to have impact, right? I left string theory because seven-dimensional black holes are irrelevant and the ocean is getting trashed. But if you want to have impact, a paper like a paper on photons from the sun at 800 meters, while awesome, will make 6 people's toes wiggle, right? If you care about preserving the ocean, it's not those toes. What you care about is industrial activity in the ocean. And if you're going to change industrial activity in the ocean, you have to be able to change the alignment of cost and environmental responsibility. You need to align profit incentives with environmental responsibility. You can only do that if you change what's possible for industry. So I left MIT and Woods Hole. Well, I'm keeping my toehold at Woods Hole. You're going to drag me out of there with screams and yells. To start Aquatic Labs, and our mission is to build massively scalable instrumentation, sensors that are built the same way we build sensors for factories, where they cost a few pennies a piece because you build millions and millions of them. To tackle ocean waterfronts, less deep ocean, but open ocean a lot, aquaculture, coastal development, and insurance industries. And the idea here is to make the process of collecting data and understanding, seeing what you need to see, whether it's chemistry or biology, as easy and accessible as possible so that people can make responsible decisions and see what's 30 meters underneath that surface of water. Is it something that's being done badly that needs to be done better, that you can change because you, that company, can improve what you're doing and increase efficiencies? And I'm doing it for that guy. All right. Thanks much.
Thank you, Allan. And I do think bioluminescence is profoundly important, so it's just my 2 cents. Finally, our last panelist is Julie Pullen. She's a climatologist, a formal engineering professor, and holding leadership roles in academia, nonprofit, government, and private sector, and scientific societies. She works at the intersection of climate resilience and climate solutions, and most recently she has become a founding partner in Propeller, which she's going to talk to you about today.
It's such a thrill to be here with you all today. I've been a fellow of this venerable organization for a little while now, and I keep on getting drawn deeper and deeper into the fold of these incredible people and the journey of exploration. And I particularly appreciate hearing the stories of the others here today about what their particular journeys in ocean technology creation look like. Mine is different, and I'll contribute my perspective to this group. I'm an oceanographer, and I spent the better part of my career understanding how the ocean and atmosphere communicate with each other, what they're whispering to each other in those quiet moments of the day or those stormy, dark nights, and representing those processes in models. When I was an oceanographer with the Navy, I, for the first time, linked together the Navy's models of the ocean and atmosphere and developed that into a forecast system that could be used by the fleet operationally. I started creating products pretty early on in my career. When I was recruited to join academia and lead a research lab in ocean engineering at Stevens Institute, I also took on the mandate and the mantle of running a research lab that was funded by Department of Homeland Security. It became the Center of Excellence for Maritime Security with the explicit direction to transition technology from academia out into the field to benefit our agencies like the Coast Guard, to have absolute operational relevance and importance. And I learned a lot from that in that tech transition process. At the same time, I was building a career with expertise in how to improve Earth system models and fundamentally utilize information that the ocean and atmosphere system was telling us to improve those models. So I participated and led field campaigns of the ocean and atmosphere. And that culminated in me doing a Fulbright on sabbatical in the Philippines, putting together a multi-institutional, multinational field campaign focused on the tropics and the weather patterns that circulate around our ocean in that tropical belt. What I saw when I was in the Philippines is that my field site in northern Luzon kept on getting wiped away by typhoons. And living with the Philippine people and recognizing the impacts they were enduring really was my catalyst to leave academia. And I wanted to do more to tell the world about climate impacts and what we were facing. And the form that took for me was joining very early at a startup that did climate risk analytics. That is downscaling the models of the Earth system to give us more granular information about the floods, the heat waves, the droughts that our planet faces at a very, very local level. I did that by bringing tooling from cloud-native software pipelines together with the Earth system models and led product development of some of the early products, as well as more recently strategy. This was the climate strategist role you see referenced there. I left that last month to join together with a few others to found an entity that explicitly focused on taking ocean climate solutions from research into the field and to do it as quickly as possible. You'll be hearing more about us in the days and weeks to come, and we're very much looking forward to catalyzing these types of transitions that we all know and feel in our hearts are vital for our planet. And happy to be part of this conversation and continue to speak with all of you during the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. I'd like to invite all of our panelists to come up and sit down so we can grill you with questions. So I do want to take questions from the audience, but first I have a couple of my own. All of you have alluded to, either in private discussions with me or up here, your work with academics. And I'm curious how that works out for you as you navigate both through this transition and moving into really compelling technologies. So, Allan, let's just go down the line here.
Well, sure. I mean, I work with myself, so I guess.
Let's expand a little.
Yeah, I'll expand a little bit. In academia, so I have a nice perspective on this, having sort of lived on both sides of the fence a little bit. In academia, you have this amazing freedom to think about things that don't have immediate impact, right? And that's a powerful gift. So one of the core bits of technology that my company is targeting involves technology that's coming out of solid-state physics labs right now that's going to be commoditized in a few years, but doesn't yet exist as a thing you can buy, right? And so that's really powerful. Being able to work with academics to see over the horizon is really, really valuable. On the other hand, as an academic, I could think about things and imagine sensor systems that I could never build as an academic because the only way to make it cost-effective is to build 1 million of them. You know, if you engineer, in ocean engineering, in the oceanographics, we build things like NASA built the space shuttle, which is awesome, and there were a handful. And that changes the calculus of the cost. Apple builds amazing things that they could never, if you built 10 of them, the iPhone would be unimaginably expensive. But if you build 10 million or 100 million, boy, all of a sudden it's affordable. And that's what's missing, I think, in the academic side. It's just impossible to raise the kind of working capital and hold stock in things. So it's important to have both that academic over-the-horizon vision, but also the sort of capital investment and actionability that industry brings to bear.
Okay. Julie?
Yeah, certainly that that ability to help others realize and conceptualize the scale factor is a really rewarding part of it. What also I find really rewarding is, in my experience as an oceanographer and academic, we're specialized. My PhD was in physical oceanography, and one of the great joys of my career has been collaborating across our subdisciplines within oceanography. Some of the most really exciting work I've done lately has been teaming up with marine biogeochemists. I wrote a piece in Scientific American on ocean deoxygenation a couple months ago, and that really was such it really brought home to me the role that kind of cross-disciplinary perspective infuses into climate solutions, and that we actually need that as the sort of integral, inherent aspect of everything that we do. So I do more of that every chance I get.
Jeremy?
Yeah, I mean, I concur with a lot of that. I think that the challenge that I have is that I don't know, I'm a little bit of a rogue individual. Like, I started working at internet service provider before. I remember going to parties in high school and telling girls that I worked at an internet provider, and they're like, what is that? Thankfully I've been married 25 years, I don't have to worry about that anymore. But eventually people did learn what the internet was. But what I realized in those moments was that, I dropped out of high school because, college, wasn't that bad of a rogue individual, because it was slowing me down, and I always had a real negative view of things. But what I noticed was that in the process of kind of like checking out of college and then checking in to the things that I was really excited for. I kind of said earlier, I'm a last mile science person, and the reason why I say that is the scientific team that I work with. We work with Dr. Peter Gerges at the Harvard Dr. Gerges Laboratory at the Harvard University. Oh my God, I'm just gonna quit. Goodness gracious, I flew from LA this morning. It shows. So the work that they're doing is unbelievably amazing, and but I feel like sometimes in academia it stops at 80%, right? And then it goes to taking that and going to get a paper, and then they start it up again. And I'm like, but there's some real amazing science there that can actually be applied in business. And I think when you put the two together, you end up with this beautiful marriage. I think as a citizen scientist, you end up going into this another realm that you wouldn't normally have. And so I'm really grateful to be able to have those partnerships, even though sometimes it seems like an unevenly yoked relationship, but it has really proven to be such an amazing experience for us.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Jeremy. Bill?
I have probably, like many of the people at this panel here, been down this road for quite a while, and I can respond to it with an old joke, and that is that heaven is a British butler and a French chef, and hell is a British chef and a French butler. Heaven in my business is being a PI with academic co-Is. Hell is being co-I to an academic PI. I'll give you one example, and that is when somebody comes to you and says, well, okay, you've got this autonomous underwater vehicle. I need to know, what you can put on this, so that we can answer the science hypotheses of this program that we're administering here. And I go back and I go, well, how many do you want? And they go, more. And the answer is always more, until eventually what happens is there's this Christmas tree effect, until eventually the vehicle doesn't really perform in the way that you had originally envisioned. If you go it the other way, at least you're somewhat in control of the process of understanding what the thing has to do, and then you rationally come back and say, how do we do the science within the realm of the possible in terms of science mobility platforms? And yeah, that's my 2 cents. Always be PI.
Good advice. I have many questions, but I know the audience has several, and so I'd like to open it up.
We have a question back there. Allan gave me permission to address Julie. Julie, the Environmental Performance Index recently reported that of 50 countries that are expected to target net zero emissions by 2050, the United States rated number 43 on that list. And as you know, NOAA reported CO2 this year in the atmosphere at 421 parts per million in May, which was a total of 36.3 billion tons of carbon put into the atmosphere this year. Well, I'm sure you're familiar with those numbers. So J.P. Morgan is going to put out a sustainability report at the end of the year, and I'm hoping that it's going to have some real teeth and accountability and not be greenwashing. And while they're at it, I think they should recommend that we put a price on carbon. So to wrap up, I can't imagine 3 better people to address these serious issues facing humanity than Jamie Dimon, Eric Schmidt, and Wendy Schmidt. Over to you, Julie.
We definitely need to get way more ambitious. I mean, if we don't do it now, who's going to do it? And we need to hold each other accountable. I know, Jeremy, you had a lot of thoughts about this, so I'm going to put it over to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really comes back to measurement, right? It's like, I mean, look, if you think that Jamie's going to come back, and Jamie, if you're watching, sorry, man, but if you think he's going to come back with any teeth of anything, he doesn't have the best track record in my personal book, and that's not anybody's view but my own. I think if we look at ESG as a whole, I think a lot of things need to change right now. We need to really start to measure the impact that's being made, because when that money is going to these investments, how do we actually know that it's making the impact that's being advertised? And so the question is are you misappropriating our funds when we invest in ESG-type products? And so I feel like if we're going to get out of this mess, climate change, all of these issues that we often talk about, these are business problems, because the status quo is the way that we're doing business, and it has to change.
All right. Do we have any other questions? Because I have a whole list here. All right. Thank you. So I am curious, and I did specifically bring you folks because you've done a transition. You've now worked in a variety of industries. And how do you think that may benefit or change the way that you see problem solving in what you're doing now compared to other folks that are trying to chip away at this? And I think just go ahead and fire away.
Yeah, I'll start out because I think I'm my transformation has been from climate risk into climate solutions. So I bring that lens when I think about the solutions that, like, what are the inherent risks associated with planting a bunch of trees in places that are prone to drought and wildfire. I think we really do have to be quantifying this, and we do have the technologies to do this. We can't just plant trees and pray that everything's going to be okay. Like, there is this level of accountability that we can bring to the projects that we work with, and this is the same, from the perspective of the ocean and ocean solutions as well. We want to make sure that we're designing them to be robust to the changing conditions on the planet, and that we're not, in scaling them, that we're not locked into any particular pathway. Good.
Well, I'll toss out one thought on that. Slightly different tack. I think coming into a new field, you have this incredible gift, which is ignorance. Right? Ignorance, when properly wielded, is an incredibly powerful tool. You're at the beginning of the learning curve. You're learning all these new things really quick, and you haven't inherited many of the assumptions and priors that your friends around you have. As long as it's married to some humility and openness to asking a lot of questions, it can be an incredibly powerful tool. And one of the things that's really nice, coming back to your first question, of interacting between academia and industry, is that there's a lot of opportunity for ignorance, and there's a lot of opportunity for seeing things that your friends and your teammates might not see. So to me, that's sort of the fun part.
Cool. Bill, Jeremy, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like with a lot of these types of things, when we look at collaboration, I think that we often segment, and I think that's also a hindrance. And I think that's one of the things I kept hearing over and over, and I realized that the only way that we really get out of this is we find ways to cross those borders. What are those gaps? If Mark and I were doing the similar kinds of things, and yet we felt like we were competing. Well, we have to remember that we're on one planet, and we have to figure out how to be crew members of Spaceship Earth, because the compartmentalizing aspect of it doesn't work. And so that to me has been kind of the drive to try to figure out the best way to really incentivize people to. And I feel like the reason that we don't is everything is all based on finance. And so could we explain the value of a healthy ecosystem? And I feel like that might be the bridge that we need.
Can we throw that question back to you? I feel like you have a lot to offer in this conversation.
Yeah, I think that at the end of the day, and I'll say this very briefly, I've been in a variety of roles. I was an oceanographer. I developed equipment. I needed to do my own work. I've worked with a variety of people to try to look at the horizon of funding and what might be important, like these folks, and then a variety of companies. And actually, this might be one of my last questions after Bill has some comments. And at the end of the day, I think what I have the great privilege of is looking at that 10,000-foot view and trying to see who are the bigger players in this, doing something more than I could do alone, and how to bring those people together. And I think because I've had a variety of experiences, that enables me to have that perspective. And luckily, I get to give the funding instead of beg for it right now, so that's also a really privileged seat to sit in. Bill, did you have any comments?
I'll jump back to just one thing, and I think you said, was there any advice to people with bright ideas for trying to make a transition? I've had the, depending on your point of view, the privilege or the horror of establishing 7 startup companies over the last 30 years. Some of them have crashed and burned. You learn a lot from failure. But probably the biggest thing that I've learned is that when you're trying to make something that's going to survive, you have to answer the fundamental question is, what is going to be the lifeblood of that organization that's going to keep your people there and funded and able to scale? And really what you have to force yourself to do is focus on the least common denominator of your idea, and can you find a way to make that attractive to somebody who wants something done. And so the tricky part, your idea of large-scale sensors is a good one. And it is, in fact, if I was going to, if somebody said, here's all the money you want in the world, solve this problem of, environmental climate change and all this, the first thing would be data. if you don't have 3D temporal data of the place you're trying to monitor, which is both the atmosphere and the ocean, right? And you can't do all of it from space. You can't do all of it from the surface. You can't. In fact, the ocean is a big place, as everybody knows here. You know, so how can you do it? There are out-of-box solutions that could be taken to bear on that. And if you said to me, "Here's the money, solve it," I'm here. Okay, and we all have big ideas about what could be done in there, and some of them would be quite radical in how to solve that problem. But the whole idea is, how do you get the data? Well, the flip side of that is, how do you pay for getting the data? And so it's really anybody who's going to try to be an entrepreneur in this field has to think that through and say, all right, what's the smallest thing that I can do, the nugget that I can do that somebody's going to pay for, and then figure out, okay, that becomes sustainable. Simply thinking that, you know, the government is going to give us money to do green things isn't going to be sustainable. You know, sadly, it's why we're not going to go back to the moon for any time soon, and we ain't getting to Mars unless Elon goes there. So,
Right. Yeah.
100% agreed.
Yeah. Excellent point, Bill. I know we're kind of running up against time, so I just wanted to ask the panelists to take 30 seconds each for any parting thoughts, anything they want to tell the rest of the group about their companies or technology, or anything you'd like to leave us with. And I'll start on this end with you, Bill. Or you can go last with you, Bill.
Yeah, I'd always like to have the last word.
Oh, okay. I'm still going to have the last one. All right. Jeremy?
Yeah, I just think that, you know, when we think about the big tasks that we have right now, we oftentimes think about something greater than us. And sometimes governments and big organizations do things. But, you know, collectively we have a lot of power. Sometimes we don't always have the best way to communicate, and I feel like many times I've often thought, you know, every single, you know, superpower that we own, if we're all coming together, then we're going to make a massive impact. You know, when I was a kid, I remember them saying, well, we're in big trouble because the ozone is depleted, and, you know, we're all going to get skin cancer. But, you know, enough people came together. We had politicians, we had industry, everyone came together, and guess what? We changed the way that we did business, because the business was broken. And so if you have a voice, you know, my advice, if you know, just leave you with, is to use that voice. And if there are you're a type of individual that is interested in data, then I would love to talk to you more, because I really do feel that if we must improve something, we have to measure it first.
That's a great example. So the oceans have been buffering the worst effects of climate change for us for quite some time. And we need to acknowledge that, and we also need to look to them to help us in terms of being a solution to climate. I want to draw attention to Brad Ack. Raise your hand. Ocean Visions, really incredible human here in the room, has been convening scientists and wider bodies of people to focus on the oceans as a climate solution. And we need more people like him.
Hi, Brad. I'm looking around the room and seeing the sled and the flags, and I grew up with this idea of exploration as the filling in of the missing spots on the map, right? And the grand tradition of ocean exploration was mapping the floor of the ocean. And the great gift of the past years of my research career and now working in industry is that that's such an impoverished view of what exploration is. The ocean is this rich, complex, three-dimensional, time-varying thing. It changes in time. Where things are growing and where food is being produced and consumed and where the evolutionary pressures are happening change from minute to minute, day to day, hour to hour, year to year. And if you want to understand and explore that ocean, you have to go there and stay. You have to monitor persistently, densely in space and in time. And that is a world to explore that's barely even touched. And sitting in this room, I feel like that vision of exploration as this grand, big, changing thing that we need to keep doing is a really important one that is often undersold.
All right, Bill, go ahead and bring this thing home.
You and I should be a duo. Yeah, he's just the mirror image of what I'm doing. Just to extend beyond what you're talking about there, that is exactly on the right track. If we want to know how things are going to behave, we have to have 3D temporal monitoring. But what I would say in our favor, and what was not possible 25, 30 years ago, is that there has been an explosive expansion in AI logic and machine learning to process that kind of big data and draw the kind of conclusions that we do today with weather forecasts, for example. The only reason that the U.S. weather forecast is reasonably pretty good is because they have thousands and tens of thousands of instruments all across the world to provide that back into cluster machine analyses that are coming up on your, weather underground or whatever you use to check your weather every day. Why not have something like that for the ocean?
All right. Well, thank you all so very, very much. I'd like to have you join me in a warm applause to all of our panelists. And I believe we're going to be kicking off our next session in a few minutes here.
I guess that's why they call it a sizzle reel. Once again, I'm Marc Bryan-Brown. I'm on the board of directors here at the Explorers Club, and I'm thrilled to be the representative for the Octopus Ambassadors. As Ted mentioned earlier, this year for Oceans Week, it was decided to choose some ambassadors to remind us all of the excitement of the ocean and the possibilities. Today is Octopus Monday, and it's not a story of doom and gloom, but really one more of inspiration and just amazement. Octopuses have been on this planet for over 100 million years before us, and there is almost no question they will be here a long time after we are gone. They are the most adaptable of species. They are in every ocean. There are over 300 that we know of, and it's just, you're going to hear a lot about the superlatives. As a part of the ambassador program, we decided to hold a photography competition. The first ever Explorers Club, OctoNation. You'll hear more about OctoNation later for the few of you who don't know about them. I'm about to announce and present to you the winner. I managed to chase down photographer Ernie Black in northern Italy, where he was attending a wedding and having a great time. But I pinned him down for 20 minutes, and we have a few minutes chat with him for his remarkable photo, Lavender Waves. There was really no question amongst the judges. And by the way, the show is downstairs, and we really do hope that you will all take time to look at the winners, the runners-up, and a large selection of the entrants who are running on a video screen. Anyway, so here is Ernie talking about this just remarkable photograph. If we could run Ernie's video, please. Oh. Hello. Good afternoon. I'm very, very proud to introduce you photographer Ernie Black. Ernie is the winner of this year's Ambassador Photograph Competition concerning octopuses that was held by OctoNation and the Explorers Club. Ernie went to visit Hawaii 11 years ago, and within a day realized that this is where he wanted to spend his life. He was always a keen amateur photographer, but after he started to encounter the ocean life around the islands, he realized he wanted to take this to another level. Well, clearly he did, because his amazing photograph, Lavender Waves, is the winner of this year's competition. And I feel we are so fortunate that we have Ernie with us, who's actually in Italy attending a wedding, but he took out a half hour so he could come and say hi to us. And here he is to tell us all about it. Ernie, welcome.
Thank you, Mark.
Tell us all about it. Tell us about Lavender Waves.
Man, it was a really cool experience. I'd just gotten a new camera, had it for maybe a week, and I went out in the water, and it was really funny timing, because at the time they had just opened a sunflower field, trying to produce like a bio oil for the island somehow. I don't know what it was going to be used for exactly, but everybody on Maui was freaking out about the sunflowers. It was just like our Instagram feeds were just full of flowers, 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 flowers. And all of a sudden, I was at a spot that I'd been at a bunch of times, and I'd seen lots of octopus there, but it was in McKane on the south shore of Maui, in very shallow water, and I was actually looking for turtles. And then all of a sudden, the most bizarre thing, an octopus comes swimming along with no coverage. There's a large patch of reef behind me, but nothing in front of me, and it's swimming at me. And I was like, no way. So I went over and I cut it off. It flared up into a flower shape for just a split second. I fired away with the camera and wasn't sure if it was kind of a blind shot, honestly. And then it darted between my legs and disappeared in the reef. And I was like, what just happened? I was like, you gotta be kidding me. I hit the playback, I looked at it, and I was like, no way, I got it. I was so stoked.
That's really, that's fantastic. So is this, it's obviously very shallow where you are, right?
Yeah, it was probably five feet at the most.
And are you in scuba gear, or are you free diving? Are you just with a snorkel and going for it?
Yeah, just snorkeling around. It wasn't even deep enough to free dive at all. I mean, where I was just looking for turtles, like I said, and I can't explain why the octopus is there. I know a lot of people, myself included, I used to catch them and handle them to photograph them, and I've since stopped, a few years back. But I don't know if some people down the beach had found one and they were playing with it and let it go, or what. Because it doesn't make sense to me. I've seen so many octopus, but I've never seen one out in the open sand like that. It is so bizarre. But
amazing.
Yeah.
Now, can you tell us, do you have any idea what behavior this is or what's going on?
I have no idea. My only guess would be that it was in attempts to intimidate me, but I can't be for sure.
Right. As you know, we are celebrating Oceans Week here at the Explorers Club. I'm just wondering, do you have any thoughts on, on Oceans Week, on the state of the oceans, how your photography could help with that, or do you have any thoughts on that?
I want everybody to love the ocean as much as I do. I know some people don't care about it. Some people don't seem to care about the environment at all. I love the fact that World Oceans Week brings a lot of exposure to it, and it just, whether it's my photo or anybody's photo, it just takes one thing that like really captivates somebody that could flip their mind and how they treat the environment, whether it's the ocean or anywhere, for that matter. But it feels good that an image like mine could potentially gear somebody towards being like, okay, maybe I won't use plastic straws. I get it now. There's something really cool that lives in the ocean, or whatnot. But I really want this to reach as many people as it can. It's a sad thing, just broadening on traveling. There's a lot of trash all over the beach, and but even baby steps are a good thing.
So you don't exclusively shoot in Hawaii, correct?
No, just pretty much anywhere. I left my camera at home, or not at home, in my vans. Why I came to Italy, just to kind of take a break. I was going to be away from the ocean for the most part, but pretty much anywhere I go, I try to stay around the ocean, so I always have a camera with me, and it's, sometimes I like to go out and just really enjoy my surroundings and take it all in instead of focusing on getting a shot, but no, I don't shoot just in Hawaii.
Right. And do you do mostly free diving or just wading, or do you also scuba?
All free diving. Occasionally I'll go scuba diving. I don't really bring my camera when I do. So I actually shoot with a surf housing. It's not designed to go super deep. So if I'm going like 30 foot on scuba or something, I'll bring it. But I prefer free diving anyway.
Well, I really sort of noticed that there's this luminous quality, this pastel luminous quality to a lot of your fantastic images, and I assume that's probably part of the reason, because you're at shallow depths.
Exactly.
And just to geek out for a moment with a little tech talk, do you, what camera are you using? What did you shoot this with? I mean, it's probably changed in the last 5 years, but
It actually hasn't. No, I've had the same camera.
Wow.
I've got a Sony. Yeah, I just upgraded to a Sony A99 Mark II.
Right.
Yeah, it's a full frame camera, my first full frame camera, and
do you ever use flash, or are you strictly an available guy?
Yeah, no flash.
Right,
so,
a purist.
Yeah.
All right. Well, again, I really want to thank you for joining us today, and it's just a remarkable image, and I'm so happy we can share it with all these people. The obvious question: what's next? What are your goals? What are you thinking?
Man, just keeping on having fun. I actually, for the time being, I'm not in Maui. My girlfriend and I have been traveling through Baja for the last 3 months, and actually kind of around the world for the last year and a half. And I would like to, when we're done traveling, we saved up for years and years, and we're just trying to experience as many new places as we can. I'm photographing along the way, and at the end, I'd like to turn photography into more than a hobby and into an actual career. So I'm working on my skills and everything like that, and I gotta learn how to market myself a little bit. But man, Mark, I appreciate all the kind words and everything, and to win this really means a lot to me. I can only imagine what I was up against. I've seen so many incredible octopus photos that I can't believe this.
Terrific. Well, again, thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing what your creativity and experience brings us in the future. Thanks, Ernie.
Thank you, Mark.
So next up is also, I'm afraid, an interview. It was people were planning to come in, but we could use the COVID excuse, but it got kind of complicated. But we've got a short piece from Warren Carlisle. Warren is the founder of OctoNation. OctoNation, for those of you who don't know, is just this extraordinary love affair for octopuses. It calls itself the world's largest octopus appreciation society. And they have over 650,000 followers on Instagram. And he puts up something, and literally it was sort of like Humans of New York and that sort of thing. All of a sudden, 200,000, 300,000 likes, and it's just a passion for him. It's an absolute passion. And you know, I think that awareness from groups like OctoNation are just a critical portion of ocean conservation, because if we get public support and public love, then the politics will hopefully follow. And that's sort of Ernie's thing too. Here's a kid who's just out there just loving the ocean, and hopefully this sharing and love will help us all. Anyway, we're very proud to partner with Warren, and here's a piece he put together for us, showing some of his favorite superpowers of octopuses and why he is just so enamored with them.
Hey everybody, I'm Warren Carlisle, founder of OctoNation, the largest octopus fan club, and welcome to World Oceans Week. This year I wanted to talk about how octopuses are the superheroes of the sea and share some information about some species you most likely have never heard of. The first thing I want to talk about is, did you know that there are over 300 different kinds of octopuses that live in every single sea and every coastline in the world? Depending on where they live, they have this unique adaptive trait or superpower that allows them to be masters of whatever environment that they find themselves in. And so this year I wanted to share with you a couple of my favorite species and talk about their superpowers. So the first one that I want to talk about is the coconut octopus. Now you might have heard of this one before, but their superpower is transforming armor. So they have the ability to walk across the ocean floor and assemble coconut shells or seashells to hide from predators. And so you can see this one here, it is got two coconut shells and it's assembled and it's kind of rolling down the hill to probably escape from predators. And now what it can do is it can essentially walk up on every single of its arms, and it's called stilt walking, where they can walk with their shells or their coconut halves across the ocean floor to kind of escape predators, but bring along like this protective armor that they can use to protect themselves. You can see it there. It kind of looks really funny with them walking on their arms because they have no bones. So it's pretty phenomenal to see them, you know, create almost like these elbows in every single which way that they can. You can see this one here. This one has some seashells, and because its front of its body is kind of exposed, what it's essentially doing is it's trying to find other items that it can collect along the ocean floor. And see, this one, it found something. And so it's like, I'm going to bring this with me, and I'm going to use it to protect my body. And so it can stop anywhere along the ocean floor, and it can use whatever it's found to kind of like create this predator-proof bunker so that nobody can get it. The next one that I wanted to talk about was the blanket octopus. Now this one kind of looks like this floating rainbow, floating through the open ocean. This one's superpower is the fact that it has an expandable cape. The female blanket octopus will unfold her webbing just like a cape, making her appear bigger to scare away predators. And you can see this video here. This is a female blanket octopus, and she's actually drawing her cape back up closer to her body so that she can swim even faster to escape predators. Now when she's trying to appeal bigger and kind of scary to other things, she'll unfurl that cape and look really big and kind of intimidating to other things in the ocean. The next one is the sand octopus. Now this one's really interesting because this one's superpower is the fact that it can't necessarily change colors as well as other species because of its sandy environment, but it can completely disappear. And it's really fascinating how it does that. So now you see me, now you don't. By shooting out powerful jets of water, this octopus turns regular sand into quicksand and then disappears below the sand. And I'll show you a quick video of how it does that. So do you see here that it's kind of using its funnel or its siphon to blow powerful jets of water into the sand, and then it disappears. Now you're probably wondering, okay, how does it breathe down there? Well, it's really interesting because it secretes a mucus to reinforce the wall so that it doesn't cave in. And then with its arm right here, do you see that? It's creating this ventilation shaft, or this chimney, that it'll then secrete some mucus and it'll pack the walls. And it'll make sure that essentially that it can breathe while it's underground. So it's a really, really cool adaptive superpower that it's learned through hundreds of millions of years of evolution. This one's really cool. This is one of my favorites. This is the hairy octopus. And now this one's superpower is its fuzzball activation. So if you look down at your hand and you look at your fingernail, you'd be surprised, but this species is actually the size of your fingernail. This tiny octopus hides with the help of its hair-like skin that makes it look just like drifty, fuzzing seaweed. So this is actually one of the most hardest species to spot. If you're an underwater photographer or an underwater videographer and you come across this species, they call it like the holy grail of octopus finds. They're really hard to spot. And you can see right here, you'd be surprised looking at it, but look down at your hand again and look at your fingernail. They're roughly the size of a fingernail. Really, really tiny octopus species. Now, this one's really cool. You might have heard of this one, the mimic octopus. This one's superpower is the fact that it's a copycat. This octopus will use its arms to expertly mimic the shape and the swimming style of other sea creatures. It can actually mimic close to 14, if not more, other sea creatures. So you can see this one here. Right now what it's doing is it's flexing its chromatophores to make it appear a little bit more contrasted. Here, it's trying to kind of mimic another sea creature. This one kind of looks like a lionfish, and it's trying to just break up its body and its skin pattern so that it doesn't look like an octopus. See how it's doing that? And this one is looking like a flatfish. So if this one swims around and kind of like goes around, it can kind of look like a flatfish so that other prey items are just like, oh, that's not an octopus. And you can see that it kept its arms close into its body to kind of like protect its arms individually. Now on the bigger side, we talked about the hairy octopus being small. The giant Pacific octopus is the largest species on this planet that we know of. And its superpower is speedy growth. These grow very quickly. The octopus grows from the size of a grain of rice to having the arm span of 16 feet. Now that's as long as like a car. So these get really, really big. And you can see here that this one is just strolling along the ocean floor, most likely trying to go find some crabs or something to eat. But what's most fascinating to me is that their suckers are actually, they can get as big as like a small dinner plate. And they're really, really strong. They can actually push and move close to like 30-pound rocks if they're trying to make a den for themselves. So they're really, really fun to watch. And you can kind of see when it got closer to the camera how big those suckers really were. But if you're curious, that's just kind of like a small sampling of octopus species. You can always go to OctoNation.com and click on Octopedia and just kind of scroll down and see the various superpowers of octopus species. We show different species profiles, like, you can see the Argonaut here, which is really interesting. It's an octopus that can make its own shell. And so you can go and you can learn about their size, their lifespan, their habitat, and you can actually learn kind of what their superpowers are. So it's a really fun resource for you to use during World Oceans Week, so you can go explore some more octopus species. And if you're even more curious and you want something to draw on, if you go to OctoNation.com and click on OctoNation Kids, we have this really fun, free activity book called Octomania. And you have crosswords in there, you can learn other octopus superpowers, and there's really cool coloring sheets as well. So again, just go to OctoNation.com, click on OctoNation Kids, download and print this out to continue learning about the octopus. But it is World Oceans Week. That's it from me today. As Warren Carlyle, again, founder of OctoNation, where we inspire wonder of the ocean by educating the world about octopuses. And we invite you to go explore and learn more about our beautiful oceans. Thank you all so much. We'll chat soon. Bye, everyone.
Well, thank you so much, Warren. He's as passionate and as interesting as his favorite friends here. Up next, we have Simon Montgomery, who is an author who specializes in animal behavior and has become somewhat of an octopus expert. Again, this is an interview. We'd hope to have her here, but I introduced her again, so I'm just going to play the tape. And here we go.
The final section of this afternoon's Ambassador Hour here at the Explorers Club, I am thrilled to introduce Simon Montgomery, renowned author and octopus expert. Her book, The Soul of an Octopus, has been published in over 14 languages and has been on the New York Times nonfiction bestseller list for years. She also happens to be one of the judges in the Explorers Club OctoNation photo competition we have just held. Welcome, Si. So, Si, why do you think that octopuses make a great ambassador for World Oceans Day and World Oceans Week here at the Explorers Club?
Well, I think you could not have picked a more perfect animal. Because, for one thing, octopuses are marine invertebrates. And most of life on our planet, most of animal life on our planet, in fact, is marine invertebrates. Octopuses have been used also as powerful symbols, stretching their arms out to connect all kinds of people and nations and ideas across many cultures for many years. And they are animals who are so unlike us, you would need to go to science fiction or outer space to find something stranger. And yet the great thing is, their minds are similar enough that you can be friends with an octopus. And I have had that pleasure many times. That's what my book was pretty much about.
Do you believe that octopuses are the peak of invertebrates' consciousness?
They're certainly the peak of what we understand about invertebrate consciousness. We don't even understand consciousness in ourselves. We don't know what's going on inside our own heads. It's very hard to decide what's going on. And also with the octopus's brain, as you know, when we talk about what's going on inside of its head, we're not even talking about where most of its neurons are. We should say what's going on inside their heads and their arms, because it's almost as if each arm has its own separate self, its own separate brain, which can operate independently of the main brain.
Yeah, they can operate them completely independently.
Yes, a severed arm of an octopus can go off and do stuff, meaningful stuff, for quite a while.
Wow. What would it do?
Well, it might hunt something. it might explore something. Because, like everyone listening, octopuses are great explorers. They are known for their curiosity. And the first time I met an octopus personally, whose name was Athena, the first time I met her, the thing that struck me the most was the moment that we reached, the lid to the aquarium was removed. It was obvious that her curiosity about me was just as sharp as my curiosity about her. She slid over to meet me from her lair. She turned bright red with excitement. I saw one of her eyes turn in its socket and lock onto my face. And she came boiling up to meet me, stretching her arms out. And I asked, can I put my hands and arms in there? And the aquarist who was with me said, yes, of course. And then she began feeling and tasting me, because all of their skin is capable of tasting, but particularly the suckers, at the same time. And I could just feel this avid curiosity and interest. And it was exactly what I was feeling about her.
And so this wasn't just, you don't believe Athena was just looking for food or looking for, you believe this was beyond primal needs?
Yeah, I think so. And I have known octopuses who would rather play with you than eat food. I've known other octopuses who really wanted their food first and then play later. And if you didn't do that, there was one octopus that I knew who was training us to make sure we gave the fish first and played later. And if we didn't do it right, she would blast us in the face with freezing cold salt water.
Wow. So you've also written a number of children's books, I understand, including one called Inky's Amazing Escape, which, of course, could you tell? I mean, I'm sure most people know the basics of the story of Inky escaping from the aquarium in New Zealand, but perhaps you could just give us a few thoughts on how Inky's showing us what we didn't already know.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is a picture book for very young readers, but very young readers love octopuses. And I have noticed that in a lot of picture books about octopuses, the head is all in the wrong place, and all this is all anatomically correct. Their head is where their head is, and they don't put the eyes on the mantle, for example. But anyway, Inky was a very popular octopus at the New Zealand Aquarium. He came in, he'd been injured, and a prawn fisherman or lobster fisherman had brought him into the aquarium, and he liked it there and got to know all the keepers. And then one day, someone left the lid on the tank ajar. And for an octopus, this is an opportunity to do what they love to do more than anything else, which is to explore. So out slid Inky the octopus. He slid down to the floor, and as in all aquariums, there's a great big drain because there's a lot of water. He went down the drain, which they could see from the slime trail, and the drain led to the sound, which was where he'd come from. So he went home. And I just love this. A lot of people called me up, having written The Soul of an Octopus, people called me up from the media saying, well, what do you make of this? And some people thought, like, gee, doesn't that show how miserable Inky was in this terrible aquarium? And I said, well, not really, because if that were the case, you would have to conclude that all of the astronauts who blasted off into outer space did so because they needed to get away from their wife and friends and family on Earth. No. These folks wanted to explore, and octopuses do too. They're extremely curious animals. They love to play with stuff, to manipulate stuff, to taste things, to move things, to find out how the world works. And in that, we are very alike, even though we are separated by 500 million years of evolution. And this is where you get to be friends with an octopus. You find something that you both enjoy, and you can share this together.
So octopuses have been around for a while. Is that not correct?
Indeed.
I mean,
Yes.
yeah, which being, I mean, they're almost completely soft-bodied except for the beak. Is that more or less correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So how do we know that? We found beaks. Is that, I mean, how do we know they've been around for so long? And are they pretty much the same as they were then, or is it hard to know?
That's a very good point that you bring up, because soft-bodied animals don't often fossilize well, but some do. And the impression that they, even if, you know, their own bodies don't fossilize, the impression that their body
we can see the shape.
Yep, yep. And the seas were once full of these guys. It was a very good design. So why mess with that? They're very successful, and they're found in all of the world's seas. There's hundreds of species of octopuses. And what worked for them millions and millions of years ago is still working for them pretty well right now.
And so you believe that they were pretty similar? Sort of, I mean, how long are we, what are the earliest known fossils? Are we talking 100 million, 100, I mean...
Boy, I would like to look that up, because it's not in my head right now.
Right.
So, but they are an old design that works very well.
Why do you think they haven't evolved further? Because they're so perfect, or is you know?
They have. I mean, they have evolved further, because there's all different kinds. There's ones that live in the deep sea. There's some that you can see through them. There's the blue ring octopuses, you know. But the thing that gave them their smarts was actually the loss of their ancestral shell. So their vulnerability, really, is what made them so smart. And that's the evolutionary fact that I just love about them. You know, if you've got a shell to protect you, you don't have to be smart in a way that humans appreciate. You just kind of sit there and your food comes. But losing that shell freed them to become hunters, to eat a wide variety of creatures, but it also made them vulnerable, because everyone can eat them. They're a delicious packet of unprotected protein. And so everyone can eat them. They have to figure out everyone who might be hunting them and all these ways to evade those predators. And meanwhile, they also have to figure out how to capture their prey, which is also varied. So, you know, on a single day, you might be hunted by a bird and a shark and an eel and a fish, but on that day you might find to eat a delicious clam and a shrimp and, you know, even a dead shark. So they have a lot to think about.
And that, but in spite of their exploring nature, and that they are not social on the whole, is that correct?
Generally not. Although this is the thing, so many things in the natural world, so many animals' lives, even though we've lived with them for so many years, people are just now discovering even about songbirds. You know, all of us think that songbirds, it's only the males who sing. Turns out that's false. And that we thought that because we have a bias for North American animals, and most ornithologists for a very long time were male. So when you're talking about somebody like an octopus, they could be doing stuff that we just don't know about, that we aren't seeing, that we don't see and can't interpret. So I think these are animals to watch closely for all kinds of revelations.
So you mentioned that your first octopus relationship was with Athena many years ago, but you've had what I would say the very good fortune to get to know quite a few octopuses. And I would love to hear, first of all, just sort of some of the more extraordinary interactions to show us just how varied they are, and any thoughts you have on what we can learn from octopuses in this way.
One thing that struck me about octopuses is how very individual their personalities are, just like ours. For a long time, anytime you spoke about an animal's personality, people shrieked that this was anthropomorphism. Well, now, personality is known to be a driving force in an animal's behavior, just like it is for a person. And those who have kept octopuses in aquaria have known this for ages. And you can tell sometimes by the names that they give their animals. There was one that was called Lucretia McEvil because she just dismantled her tank every day. Another was so shy, her name was Emily Dickinson. She just hid behind the filter the whole time. And then there was Leisure Suit Larry, and you can imagine that his arms were just all over you. He'd peel off one arm and his two arms would go on. Now, for the octopuses who I knew personally, when I met Athena was known as a feisty octopus. And I met her towards the end of her life, but I was the first person who did not work at the aquarium that she allowed to pet her head. So she and I got along very well. But sometimes an octopus will take a dislike to someone, and they'll just take one look at you and want to blast you in the face with freezing cold salt water, or they'll make an eye bar showing that they want to get away from you, or they'll just jet away. I never had that with an octopus, but I was afraid when I met the next octopus that, what if this octopus doesn't like me? The next octopus I met was Octavia, and at first she wanted nothing to do with me. But after trying all day, several different times, by offering her something to eat that she might enjoy, she grabbed the fish, grabbed the grabber. I was not holding it out of my hand, but holding it out of the grabber because she didn't let me get my hand that close to her right away. Grabbed the grabber, pulled on the grabber, then got me, and then started pulling me into the tank. And this was curiosity. I did not feel like I was under attack, and I wasn't. But she was showing me, one, she was interested in me, and two, I think she may have wanted to display how strong she is. They are tremendously strong. A single 3.5-inch diameter suction cup can lift 30 pounds. And they have 200 of them on every one of their arms. So, if this animal had wanted to hurt me, had wanted to drown me or something like that, she could have easily done so, but she didn't. She was just interested. Well, the next time I went back, which was, I think, the next week, I didn't know for sure she'd remember me because we just interacted a few times. And the first time wanted nothing to do with me, and then she had the pulling incident. Well, I was thrilled that she was eager to greet me, and I brought some friends with me from a radio station. And we were all, like, petting her and letting her taste us and feel us. We were watching her change color. We had a bucket of fish that we were periodically feeding her. But we were so absorbed in, the majesty of this strange, beautiful creature that we didn't notice that she'd taken the bucket right out from under us. When we went to get another fish to feed her, we found it was gone. And she didn't even want the fish. She wanted the bucket, and she was hiding it under her interbrachial web. And I think if octopuses could laugh, she was laughing at us.
Are you aware of octopuses having relationships like this with other animals?
We are now, the scientific community of humans, are now starting to document the facts that they often will adopt, like a fish as a hunting partner, for example. Some people may remember an instance in which it appeared an octopus balled up one of the arms and punched a fish. Do you remember seeing that?
Yeah.
And they're like, gosh, what a bully. But the more interesting part of that seems to be that the octopus, this may have been an instance in which the octopus had a hunting partner, and the hunting partner screwed something up, and it annoyed her. So, yeah, they do seem sometimes to to pair up with other animals. And this happens throughout the terrestrial world. We're well aware of that. Honey badgers, for example, in Africa, will team up with a bird who knows where there's a nice bee's nest. But the bird isn't strong enough to knock down that honeycomb. But the honey badger is strong and has these fabulous claws and also very tough skin. And so the two will work together. So octopuses do appear to do that with other sea creatures.
Wow. Wow. Amazing. So we've talked a lot about how octopuses can relate to us and how we can relate to them and similarities. Are there some remarkable differences between octopuses and us that we should probably learn from?
Oh, wow, yeah, absolutely. They're as different from us as you can get and still be on the same planet, I think. They can taste with their whole bodies. They've got 3 hearts. They've got blue blood. They can pour their bodies through small openings. We are constrained by joints. They are not. They are just a fluid creature. They are perfectly adapted to the sea, so they can do things that we cannot. And I think one of the greatest things that they show us is how varied intelligence can be. That you can be smart for different reasons. They got their smarts in a totally different way than we got ours. You know, they are often solitary, short-lived invertebrate. We love to talk about how smart we are because we live so long and we have so many social relationships. That's why we developed our smarts. But it reminds us that there are intelligences out there vastly different from our own that we need to appreciate and study, and that there's more than one way to do something right. And
I mean, as people, those of you who've seen my octopus teacher, we all know the awful truth, which is that almost all octopuses, after caring for their eggs, pass. Right? They pass on. That's the end of their lives. But you had some extraordinary statistics about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, imagine a giant Pacific octopus, for example, may lay 100,000 eggs. Well, if all of those survived, we'd be up to our lips in octopuses, right? Which actually would be a good thing. But to be able to live long enough to see your offspring hatch, I like to think that feels like your life is finished and complete. And that gives this particular image even added meaning, because this is the finish line for this mother octopus. She is looking at the great accomplishment of her life, after which she will be no more. I mean, she may not know that, but we know that, and that gives it extra poignancy.
And she will not eat or do anything during this time, is that correct?
That is correct.
She just stays and... What?
He stays and watches them and cleans them and protects them from predators. She uses every last ounce of her strength and her wit.
You were mentioning that this could go on for quite a long time.
Well, with Octavia laid eggs at the New England Aquarium. I knew her very well from pretty much the moment she showed up at the New England Aquarium, and we were good friends. In the wild, she would have spent about 6 months before her eggs would have hatched, but her eggs were infertile, so they were never going to hatch. But she didn't know that. The wisdom that she had passed down from the ancestors was, I'm going to stay with my eggs. I'm going to stay with my eggs, and I'm not going to leave them. But they never hatched. Well, she was protecting those eggs, not just 6 months, 7, 8, 9, like 10 months. The eggs were starting to disintegrate, but she still would not leave them. And that was very moving for me to see.
Sure. And what we're seeing also in the skin while we're here is, are those chromatophores in the eyes as well as the...
Yes, this is so amazing. Yeah, you can see the individual chromatophores in the eye. Every bit of the octopus, except the tips of the suckers and inside the gills, can change color, and most of the body can also change shape.
And do we believe that that is, is some of it spontaneous and some of it, do we believe the octopus controls that? Or is it...
Yes, we think that they can control it to an extent. Sometimes they don't, just like when we blush, when we're embarrassed. We wish we didn't. Octopuses probably change color without having to think about it.
Right.
And sometimes the color may just wash over them. Interestingly, when they're trying to solve a problem, sometimes people have noticed that different colors will flash across their faces, like a person will, wrinkle their brow, for example. They'll change colors, and they probably aren't thinking about doing that. And what makes all of the color changes even more amazing is that it appears that their eyes are not capable of detecting color.
You were one of the judges on the first Explorers Club OctoNation Octopus Photography Contest. I was too, and we had, it was such a pleasure. There were over 400 submissions, and I felt we came up with some really remarkable pictures, and I'm very, very pleased with the whole thing. I would love to run through a few of the pictures and get your thoughts on them. So here we have the winner of the details category of the OctoNation Explorers Club Octopus Photo Competition. And it's just a beautiful photograph by Kevin Lee, and I was wondering if I could get your thoughts on it.
Oh, I love this photograph. We all did. I think it gives you a feeling of intimacy. This is a mother octopus watching over her eggs. And as different as octopuses are from us, I think this picture has a lot of emotion in it. And it conveys that desire to look after your offspring that we share across taxa. It feels very intimate and sweet to me.
So this is not a winner, but I just thought it was sort of fun and cute, by Brandon Hannan, or Hannan, I suppose. I just, our little boxing octopus friend, and I am anthropomorphizing there, but this is a behavior, correct?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It looks like put up your dukes.
Right.
But what's interesting too about this that I'd like to point out is that some scientists have found that octopuses have some bold arms and some shy arms, and you can sure see which arms are bold on this octopus.
So this is a behavior where it's going to snap out and catch something at some point? Is that what?
Yeah, or it might be defensive depending on who it's facing. I need to see what was around it, what's going on.
Sure.
But this is a posture that you will see octopuses do, and I love it that this is such a small octopus, and yet he's so brave. And as you're looking around him, he's not like hiding in a shell or anything like. He's out there in the elements. Nothing is protecting him but his.
I know.
I'm
worried. I'm a little worried for him or her at this point.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. Well, I know you're out of time. Thank you so much, Si. I feel like we just scratched the surface of your knowledge of these amazing cephalopods. I encourage everyone to go and see your work at SiMontgomery.com. Thank you again to everyone.
All right, and as a very brief finale, I'd like to introduce Joe Grabowski, who, when we had the photo competition, about halfway through, we were like, you know what, it would be really nice to get the youth involved, and but let's have them make drawings. And Joe runs a company called Exploration by the Seat of Our Pants, or Your Pants, I think it is, and which goes into classrooms and brings field scientists into classrooms, and he ran that part of the show. Joe, are you here? There he is. Great. Come on up. Testing. Ooh. Good. Yeah, it's good. So Joe, very briefly, so tell us how you decided to do this, and how this went.
Yeah, well, we couldn't let you have all the fun with the photo contest, so we wanted to bring kids into it, and so you put me in touch with Warren and Chris from OctoNation, and we put together a series of events for the classrooms. One where Warren taught them all about octopus superpowers, and then Chris is a great animator. He's worked with Disney and Coca-Cola. He works with OctoNation as well, and so he did a great drawing session with all the students to get them going.
But let me just step back for one second. The work you do is mostly in classrooms. Is that correct? Do you want to just tell us a minute about that, and it sort of feeds into this?
Yeah, so Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants is all about inspiring the next generation of scientists and explorers. So we do that by bringing those on the front lines of science, exploration, adventure, and conservation live into classrooms around the world, across North America. So we've been doing it since 2015. We've probably hosted well over 3,000 live events. 500,000 students and scientists and explorers from over 95 countries have joined us over the years.
And how many classrooms did we involve in the photo competition?
Hundreds of classrooms joined us. We've got probably 400 or 500 submissions that came in on time, and I think we have some to share.
Fantastic. Well, first of all, there's like a half-minute video showing the lesson. So can we roll that, please?
Now, for some octopuses, this is how they catch prey, and they can do some other really cool things with this webbing, and so it's important to know that their arms are connected by webbing. They're not just out there on their own. A little fast. Take your time, look at it. The next thing I want you to do is that on this eye, right on the other side of the head here, we're going to draw a semicircle. We're not going to complete it all the way because it's important to remember octopuses don't have two eyes on the front of their head like we do.
It's very cool.
Great.
Up again.
Oh, that was great. Good job. You had more stuff around it? Look at that. Is that seaweed down there and a puffer fish?
I love the top hat.
The top hat. I love top hat.
The top hat is amazing. I think there's like a little bow tie too.
That's so cool. I love that.
Very, very cool.
So, yeah, really a fun part. And I believe we have a few of the images. Am I going to let Joe control that with a clicker? There you go.
Thanks.
Can you start it, or how do we do this? We're just going to look at like half a dozen, and then we'll let you go and schmooze and drink.
Yeah, so we had 3 categories. We had color, we had black and white, and then we had whimsical. So just kind of let the students run with it a little bit, maybe come up with their own octopus superpower. So here we go. Here's a few of the finalists. So we're going to announce tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern. We have a live event with Chelsea Benish. She's the Octo Girl with OctoNation. So she's going to join us to make that big announcement. So here's a few color ones. Yeah, I'll get out of the way there. Let's take a look at those. A few of the whimsical ones are mixed in there as well, so you've got a nice little
I love
crown.
the crown. The
Yeah.
crown was great on that.
I like this one. I think there's some eggs around this one. That's a pretty cool one. Use of color.
What sort of age range are we talking about?
We had
here?
submissions kindergarten right through high school. So it was a popular event. So here's one of the black and white ones. I think this might be one of the mimic ones. This is a really cool drawing there. So just lots of different designs here in the different categories.
Yeah.
Got some more whimsical ones coming in there.
That's great.
A little raincoat action. I like the boots on all the tentacles.
It's expensive for those boots.
I think this is one of the little hairy ones that Warren was talking about, the little fingernail-sized one. And then there's another nice little sketch of black and white one.
5th grade. I love it. Good.
Yeah, so now we have to
All right. Well,
make the announcement.
These are on display down. I mean, there's a rolling slideshow in the members' lounge, in the Octo Lounge, I should say, which is next to the Mangrove Lounge and the Penguin Parlor. And I hope you'll all go down there. I just want to thank everybody for joining us today and sitting through this. And yeah, enjoy and don't go away because we've got big ideas. It's not up yet. Big ideas coming at 7 o'clock, which is going to be really exciting. And again, thank you very, very much. May all your... Good.